Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I have a few episodes backed up for you this week, so a huge apology from me for leaving you high and dry for a few days. But in complete transparency, I'll tell you how I run this show. In a nutshell, I record 10 interviews a week, or should I say I schedule in 10 episodes a week. Why, you say, when there are only 7 days in a week? Well, I do occasionally get people that cancel. Bob's got flu, Jimmy has to catch a flight, Alison has to rush into a board meeting. I've got a long list of excuses. I could make a book out of it, believe me. So I figure if I record 3 extra, it covers me for the week if I get any cancellations. And 2, some of my guests, all their teams, ask for a quick listen so they can approve the podcast before it goes live anywhere. And again, in terms of transparency, it's not for any sinister reasons, but some CEOs might, for example, excitingly say something along the lines of, "We help McDonald's transform their business." But the marketing team will quickly say to the CEO, "McDonald's don't allow us to say that publicly anywhere." So it makes sense we get it checked before it gets sent out there to 165 countries via Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all the other platforms. So working this way, I usually find myself a good week to 10 days ahead. But over the holiday season, the hopper ran low, and last week I had 4 cancellations. You know who you are. And a few were also a little late reviewing the podcast. I think everyone's a little bit sluggish after getting back after the holiday season. So I'm going to be doubling up this week, but I just wanted to let you know that I am okay. Normal service is about to be resumed. But you didn't download this podcast to hear about my problems. Who cares about that? You're here for stories of how tech is transforming our world, but also get some real world examples. And today's topic is AR. And augmented reality is widely tipped to rock our world. But how can businesses actually leverage this technology? And are there any real-world use cases out there? Well, Eric Navarrette joins me on the Tech Talks Daily Podcast today to talk about how his augmented reality technology fixes issues for entertainment studios that utilise a Hollywood staple. Yes, you know what I'm talking about, the green screen. And the reason this is a big deal is because post-production can be time-consuming and expensive, often pushing film and television projects way past deadlines and budgets. And after spending over 2 decades funding startups and leading in the advertising space, the ARwall founder developed this breakthrough solution which involves digital backdrops that display realistic VFX-heavy sets in real time with no fix-it-in-post required. And as you would expect, an invention that replaces the green screen in spectacular fashion is incredibly exciting. But is anybody using it? Well, already, the green screen replacement has been used for projects by Netflix, Syfy, HBO, and even made an appearance on the HBO series Watchmen Red Carpet. But enough scene setting from me. So come with me all the way to California so we can learn more about how this AR solution is replacing green screen as we go and talk with Eric Navarrette, CEO of ARwall. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Eric. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Eric Navarrette. I'm one of the co-founders and chief marketing officer of ARwall. We're a spatial imaging technology company. We got started in film visual effects. We created an augmented reality solution, essentially to get rid of green screen for productions. That's how the company started. And since then, we've been pivoting a little bit more into experientials and consumer-facing experiences, basically.
Excellent. I know you're just back after CES, probably seeing daylight for the first time after a week. But after reading about ARwall, I just had to invite you on the podcast today. But for everyone listening, tuning in and hearing about it for the first time, can you bring everyone up to speed with how your augmented reality technology solution fixes issues for entertainment studios that utilize that Hollywood staple, which we all know and maybe love, the green screen?
Sure. So about half of the founding team has some background in entertainment, coming from film, television, special effects, visual effects, that sort of thing. Green screen is kind of ubiquitous. I think audiences know of it simply because it's used in so many films, especially the blockbusters. So everyone's kind of come to terms with the fact that this is a mainstay of the filmmaking process today, right? Yeah. What audiences don't realize, though, is that green screen is actually, in a lot of ways, extremely limiting. It's very costly, and it's very time-consuming. And really, there's a few things that we fix using the process that we developed. So what we do is essentially an update to rear screen projection. You can imagine if you've ever seen, an older movie, like a black and white movie, perhaps, where people are driving in a car having a conversation, and you could see that there's a background projected behind them through the rear window and all that, right? Yeah. That's rear screen projection. Or Dorothy when she's running in trying to get to the storm cellar with the tornado behind her. That they didn't put her outside and wait for a tornado to hit. They created that sequence ahead of time, and then they projected it behind Judy Garland, right? Mm-hmm. So rear screen projection creates beautiful composites. It was a very useful technology and was used for decades by Hollywood. The only problem with it is that you really can't move the camera, or at the very least, you can only move it completely parallel to the screen. It has to be absolutely perpendicular to it for the image to look realistic. Because as soon as you tilt it in any other axis, you're going to skew that image. You're going to realize it's actually a flat screen behind the actor. It's not a rich environment behind them, and the illusion's broken, right? So it eventually got out of vogue because the early versions of green screen were coming out, and you had a little more movement that could be added to the camera, and it became a little more dynamic, right? So that's the quick history, right? What we've done now is we've taken this technique, this rear projection technique, and we've allowed the camera operator to move in 6 degrees of freedom. So they can get as close to the subject as they want. We can go handheld. We can mount it on a gimbal or on tracks or whatever you want to do. We give the cinematographer the full range of movement that they would expect off of a practical set. But we update that virtual background behind the performer, and we're updating it from the point of view of the camera itself. So no matter where they point that camera, if it's looking at one of our AR walls, it's going to look like a rich virtual image, a rich set extension, and it covers the same compositing that you would get by putting somebody in a green screen soundstage and then spending months creating that image around them. So that's the quick version of what we do. And part of the reason why it's fast and it's providing a huge cost savings to productions.
And like you said, most audiences are aware of the green screen and how it's used. But for people outside of the industry, they are blissfully unaware of the other problems that are going on. So can you explain the scale of the problem that you're solving and how post-production can actually be incredibly time-consuming, expensive, and often even pushing film and television projects past deadlines and budgets?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, one of the main issues with green screen is that there's really only one way to light a set. So if you've watched, a major production from the past few years, it doesn't matter if they're on some alien planet or they're in the future or they're in the past. The lighting that you see wrapping around the actors is pretty static from one movie to another, even one location inside the same movie to another, which gives it kind of a flat, almost unrealistic look to it. And the reason why this is done is that you need to light them in a very specific way so that you can cleanly cut them out and then apply them later using green screen compositing. So it gives kind of a boring lighting design to all films. Beyond just that, being able to composite through things like windows, reflective surfaces, mist, fog, smoke, translucent materials, costuming, that sort of thing. That's also very expensive and time consuming. And most productions would rather just not deal with it. So you see that the lighting design is less interesting in modern films. You'll see that often the costuming, the props, the sets are often minimalistic because they want to avoid as much extra compositing as possible. And ultimately, you have less dynamic camera movement too. It's very expensive to composite a shot with movement in it. So you'll usually have one very expensive, eye-catching, establishing shot in a scene or a sequence. And then if you watch closely, you'll see that pretty much every shot after that is locked off. So there's no dynamic movement, which leads to less exciting visual storytelling. So all of that stuff gets thrown out the window when you use us. Since we're lighting the sets in real time using our ARwalls, all of the light coming off of our screen is refracting through the windows, through bouncing off of reflective surfaces, appearing through people's fuzzy hair, all of that sort of stuff. And it doesn't matter how much you move the camera, the lighting is going to look accurate because it's real light coming off that screen. So it's not just freeing up the ability to do more shots and to do them more quickly, but it's also offering directors and cinematographers some more artistic freedom too, to dress the set the way they wanted to have the performers move about how they want. And in particular, when you see, the very expensive sci-fi blockbusters coming out, when there is camera movement, it's often programmed in advance, weeks in advance, and carefully storyboarded and all of that. And there's no way to change that shot sequence once they get to set. But anyone who's ever worked in theater or worked on a set, worked with actors, period, knows that you can plan things out as much as you want, but sometimes there is a moment that you don't realize existed until your performers are on set in costume doing the scene. And being able to offer the director the ability to change what they had planned, to capture that movement, to move the camera in a certain way, or to have a different type of camera movement, that's what our system allows. And we found that the directors and the DPs and the producers that have worked with us are extremely grateful to have that creative freedom back in their hands and not have it essentially cut off because of budgetary concerns.
And it's incredibly exciting hearing how you're replacing the infamous green screen approach. But I think for many people listening, I think, well, this is possibly a great idea, a concept, or built on future promises. But it's important to point out that this green screen replacement has already been used for projects by studios such as Netflix, Syfy, and HBO. That's just a few that I've read about. But could you share some of those stories?
Sure. So in specific, our first project that we did was a co-production between NBC Universal and Netflix. So that was Night Flyers, which debuted early in 2019. Essentially, in the pilot episode, every time you look out through the window of the spaceship, that is our technology powering those sequences. So the actors are able to look through and react against what they're seeing on screen. And they have these beautiful reflective consoles throughout the bridge of that spaceship. You can see the light dynamically changing, washing across people's faces, spilling across the screens and all that. That's something that we were able to provide. So that was a Netflix, NBC production. For HBO, we essentially did offer this same technology, but it was a different use case. In regards to HBO, what we did was the Watchmen premiere. So Watchmen was their limited series that came out late last year. And for the red carpet premiere, we created a virtual scene, a virtual skyline of Tulsa, which is where the show takes place. And we created the owl ship that was a famous vehicle from the original comic and also featured in the show. We created a bunch of different animation paths and interactivity with the ship. And basically what we did was we shot all of the cast and above the line talent that attended the screening against our wall. And we were able to do that in less than an hour. So it was incredibly quick on the turnaround for that. And they captured a lot of marketing material. And they used that for that first week push to announce the show and get people excited for it. So it's interesting that we repurposed our film tool, but used it in a slightly different way and used it for basically marketing collateral.
And how has it been received by the industry? What kind of feedback have you had?
The feedback from people that have actually managed to get it onto their set has been incredibly enthusiastic. There are quite a few people in the industry that are fans of us that are dying to use it, but the unfortunate reality is that the productions that get greenlit and that actually move forward, the people that make those decisions aren't necessarily the artists that are on set. It's made by executives and producers and the like. So from the point of view of people who are the decision makers and are always looking at the bottom line, they're always very hesitant to try a new technology until it's been proven out many, many times. So what we found over the past year is that we've done a fair amount of work that's very fun, very exciting with short form content. So we're talking about short films. We're talking about the commercial work we did for HBO, music videos. It's basically filmmakers who are the director, the producer, and the ultimate decision maker. Those are the ones that have really jumped in feet first and have used it. And we're making traction within the studios, but they basically want to see that it's foolproof. They want something that is absolutely not going to fail on set, because it could be their job. If something goes wrong, they don't want to do that. So the industry it moves a little bit slow sometimes, is basically what we're finding out.
And what are your biggest challenges when increasing adoption and getting people on board with it? Because I would imagine you do have a great ROI, and you are helping cut costs and equally time. And time is the only non-renewable resource too. So, what are your biggest challenges?
Well, really, it's convincing the decision makers that this is a viable tool and that it's going to be worthwhile. And we've been combating that by taking on smaller projects and independent projects where, like I said, the filmmaker is the decision maker. They see the value in it. And already we've helped a couple of people complete their projects who were very frank and said, I would have never been able to do this if it wasn't for your technology. So, getting that sort of feedback from clients is certainly valuable. And as we continue to build a portfolio of work, I think we're going to be able to justify, not only the usefulness of the technology, but the robustness of it as well.
And I believe if we step outside of Hollywood, you're also helping solve problems for businesses in post-production with real-time technology, especially in a fast-paced industry. This is incredibly attractive too. But can you expand on that and how it's not just something to be used inside Hollywood?
Sure. So, very similar to what I was talking about a moment ago with HBO and Watchmen. They saw our film tool. They thought it was very interesting. And then they said, hey, we'd like to use it for a marketing purpose. We got that a lot after debuting the technology, inviting people to demo it. A lot of people said, yeah, this sounds great. I'd love to use it on, my next project. And then we would get this all the time. I could also use this at, a red carpet premiere that I'm about to host, or at an industry event, or at a pop-up, or whatever the case may be. There was a lot of questions about how could they use it for non-filming purposes. And we got that request so often that we realized, well, there must be something here. There has to be an opportunity here beyond just filmmaking. And so we started thinking about how to essentially use the same spatial imaging know-how that we have, the same essential solve that we have. How do we extract the camera out of that and put a user there instead? And so that's when we came up with our interactive platform. It essentially is a large screen. It could be anything from an LED wall to a giant screen TV to a projector system. It doesn't really matter to us, but it's a large display of some sort. And when a user steps into the track space, we have a camera array that is attached to the system. It recognizes the user when they step in. It adjusts the screen perspective to their head position. So when a user steps in front of our platform, what they're seeing is essentially a window into a virtual space. And then they get to interact with the content that's provided there. That could be a gaming experience. It could be brand information. It could be a map to get them from point A to B. There's really no shortage of things that we could put on the display. And it's attractive to businesses because it gets people to look up from their phone. It's engaging. And it's essentially offering a virtual reality experience, but they don't need to wear a headset. They don't need goggles. They don't even need an attendant running the screen to operate it. So this is basically offering all the things that brands are looking for, but less hardware involved, and you don't need a dedicated employee to run it. So that is the solve that we've created. That's what we took to CES last week to show off. And that's what we already have in one retail location right now.
I'm glad you mentioned CES there, because it's important to highlight you won some pretty big awards. And one of course, is Best AR Experience for ARwall Interactive over at CES. So can you share your experiences in CES? I know what happens in Vegas is supposed to stay in Vegas, but maybe you can break that rule just this one.
Yeah, nothing that exciting happened as far as you're intimating. We did win the award, and that was specifically for the interactive platform that I just described. So we took a unit with us to Vegas. We were displaying it at the Dreamland XR event, which is where we were showcasing, and we were there alongside several other AR and VR companies. And it was interesting because I think we somewhat stood out. We were the only company there that didn't have a headset, which is something that we typically run into when we go to these sort of events. So we won for Best Interactive Platform. Our interactive platform is already out in the wild, so to speak. It's currently running at M&M's World Las Vegas, which is on the main strip. It's on the 4th floor currently. And so guests can walk up right now. They can go over to the store. We've created a branded game for M&M's where the users are trying to catch the candies as they fall down and toss them into the hands of the M&M's characters. And then at the end of that experience, based on how many characters they rescued, so to speak, they get to take an AR photo with those people or with those characters, and then they can download it for free. So that's one instance of our system out there already being used by the public, and I'm very pleased to report that we have several other brands interested in talking to us. So hopefully we'll have a variety of experiences available for people to use at many locations before the year's out.
Cool. Well, I'm at Vegas for the Dynatrace event in 2 weeks' time, so I'm going to make a little journey out there to check that out. I'm quite excited for that. But what's next for ARwall? Is there anything else you can share with us today?
So we're still we're primarily focusing right now on consumer-facing experiences. So we're trying to get our kiosks out there into malls, airports, theaters, those sorts of locations. We're also talking to some location-based entertainment companies about potentially translating some games into an experience that could work on our interactive platform. So that's pretty exciting as well. But we're still filmmakers at the end of the day, and we are working with some colleagues of ours to create another film tool that we're very excited about. I can't really discuss much more beyond that, but I am very confident in thinking that we will have an exciting new tool available, hopefully within the next, by the end of Q2. And I think it's going to solve a lot of problems for people. So we're really looking forward to having that come out and eventually being able to give more details about it when it's available.
Note to self, invite you back on in Q2 to find out a little more. Well, a huge thank you for joining me today. Before I do let you go, for anyone listening that just wants to find out more information, maybe look on your website, a few videos if you've got any, what's the best way of finding you online and contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Certainly. So our website is arwall.co. You can find pretty much all of our information there. You can also look us up on YouTube. We have plenty of videos that have been published publicly. And all you need to look for is at ARwall.co. That's our handle for YouTube, also for Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode. And I'll also put one of the videos on there as well, just to help people visualize just how incredibly cool it is. I mean, an AR solution without the need of a headset, replacing green screen, saving time, saving money. It's all incredibly exciting. So thanks so much for taking the time. I know you must be incredibly worn out after Vegas, but thanks for coming on and sharing the story with me today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
So ARwall greatly reduces editing costs, cuts down on filming time for production themes, and it shortens project pipelines and budgets, helping film and TV projects stay on pace with today's heightened viewing cycle, which moves at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Okay, but you're saying, yes, no, that's great, but anyone using it? Well, yes. Already, the green screen replacement has been used for projects by Netflix, Syfy, and HBO. But over to you. Are you excited about the possible end of green screen? If you work in entertainment, do you have a viewpoint on this tech? Or do you just want to say hello or even ask a question? Whatever it is, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can find me on all social channels at Neil C. Hughes. And of course, my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So, like I said at the very beginning, I've got a heap of podcast episodes coming your way this week, so I won't ramble on. Just a genuine thank you to each and every one of you for listening to this podcast. Peace and love to you all. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.